in the tense atmosphere of the early Cold War. Whispers of advanced psychological warfare became a source of deep paranoia for American intelligence. Fears mounted that communist powers, particularly the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea, were developing sophisticated mind control techniques. The American public was captivated by stories of brainwashing, allegedly used on U.S. prisoners of war during the Korean War. These anxieties culminated within the halls of the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency. On April 13, 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles officially approved a highly secretive and ambitious new project. This program was given the cryptonym MKUltra. Its mandate was broad and terrifyingly vague: to research and develop methods for controlling the human mind. The agency sought a definitive truth serum for interrogating captured spies. They also aimed to develop techniques to manipulate foreign leaders and other persons of interest. The project was placed under the command of a brilliant but ruthless chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb, known within the agency as the Black Sorcerer, would become the mastermind of MKUltra's darkest experiments. MKUltra was not a single, monolithic operation but an umbrella for approximately 149 sub-projects. These projects were farmed out to over 80 institutions across the United States and Canada. Hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies, and universities became unwitting or complicit partners in the research. The core of MKUltra's research revolved around the use of psychoactive substances. Lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD, became the program's signature drug. The CIA was fascinated by LSD's potential to shatter the ego and induce suggestibility. They believed it could be used to extract information or even reprogram an individual's beliefs. Experiments were not limited to LSD. A host of other substances were also tested. These included psilocybin, mescaline, heroin, barbiturates, and amphetamines. The methods of administration were often covert and always unethical. Many of the program's test subjects were unwitting American and Canadian citizens. The agency deliberately targeted individuals who they believed could not fight back. This included mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and sex workers. Informed consent was a concept wholly disregarded by the architects of MKUltra. One of the most notorious sub-projects was codenamed Operation Midnight Climax. This operation established CIA-run brothels in cities like New York and San Francisco. Prostitutes on the CIA's payroll would lure unsuspecting men back to these safe houses. Once there, the men would be drugged with LSD without their knowledge. CIA agents, including Gottlieb himself, would then observe the effects from behind two-way mirrors. The sessions were often recorded on audio tape for later analysis. The goal was to study the effects of LSD in a real-world, non-laboratory setting. Beyond drugs, MKUltra explored a wide array of other manipulative techniques. Hypnosis was a major area of interest for the program's researchers. They attempted to create hypnotic couriers who could transport information without conscious memory of it. Researchers also investigated sensory deprivation, isolation, and various forms of psychological abuse. In some cases, high-voltage electroshock therapy was used, not for treatment, but for experimentation. The program's activities sometimes had lethal consequences. In November 1953, an Army scientist and bioweapons expert named Frank Olson was covertly dosed with LSD-U. Olson, who had no idea he had been drugged, suffered a severe psychological breakdown. 9 days later, he plunged to his death from the window of his 10th floor New York hotel room. His death was initially labeled a suicide, but his family suspected foul play for decades. The full truth of the CIA's involvement would not be revealed for more than 20 years. Another sub-project aimed to develop a method for erasing memory using suboral frequency blasts. This program, morbidly nicknamed Perfect Concussion, was ultimately deemed too impractical to implement. The experiments violated the Hippocratic Oath, the U.S. Constitution, and the Nuremberg Code. It was a profound betrayal of public trust and scientific ethics. By the late 1960s, the counterculture movement had embraced LSD, stripping it of its secrecy. The drug's potential as a covert weapon diminished as its effects became widely known. Internally, the CIA also began to question the practical value and morality of the program. In 1973, facing increasing scrutiny from Congress, CIA Director Richard Helms made a fateful decision. He ordered that all official records related to Project MKUltra be destroyed. The mass destruction of files made a full accounting of the program's scope nearly impossible. However, a clerical error saved some documents from the shredder. Approximately 20,000 pages of financial records were accidentally sent to the wrong record center. These surviving documents would become the key to unlocking the secrets of MKUltra. In 1975, the Church Committee, a U.S. Senate Select Committee, began investigating abuses by intelligence agencies. The existence of MKUltra was officially revealed to a shocked American public. The hearings exposed the decades of illegal and unethical human experimentation. Survivors and their families finally began to understand the source of their trauma. The revelations led President Gerald Ford to issue an executive order in 1976. This order strictly prohibited drug experimentation on human subjects without their informed, written consent. Despite the hearings, many questions about MKUltra remain unanswered. The full extent of the program's reach and the number of its victims may never be known. MKUltra stands as a chilling chapter in American history. It serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked power and secrecy. The program's legacy continues to fuel conspiracy theories and public distrust. It highlights the vulnerability of individuals in the face of state-sponsored research. The story of MKUltra is a reminder of the ethical lines that must never be crossed. It is a testament to the courage of those who fought to bring the truth to light. The project officially began under the shadow of the Korean War. Allen Dulles saw the program as a necessary evil in the fight against communism. Gottlieb personally tested LSD on himself before administering it to others. The project's budget was hidden within other CIA accounts, making it difficult to trace. Many participating university researchers were unaware of the CIA's direct involvement. They believed they were conducting legitimate medical or psychological studies. Prisoners were often promised reduced sentences in exchange for their participation. One sub-project involved studying the effects of hypnosis on creating amnesia. The CIA even consulted with stage magicians to learn about sleight of hand and misdirection. These skills were adapted for use in covertly administering drugs to targets. The safe houses in San Francisco were decorated by a CIA interior designer to look like French brothels. This was intended to make the clients feel relaxed and uninhibited. The project's code name, MKUltra, does not stand for anything specific. The MK prefix was used for projects sponsored by the technical services staff. The program also experimented with subliminal messaging. They tested whether hidden commands could influence a person's behavior. The results of these subliminal experiments were largely inconclusive. Some experiments involved giving subjects LSD for weeks or even months at a time. The psychological damage inflicted on these individuals was profound and permanent. The CIA attempted to create a Manchurian Candidate-style assassin. This involved using hypnosis and drugs to create a programmable killer. There is no evidence that they ever succeeded in this goal. The program's activities extended to Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. Former Nazi scientists were recruited for their expertise in interrogation and torture. This was part of the broader controversial Operation Paperclip. The Canadian government was also involved in a parallel series of experiments. These were centered at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Dr. Ewan Cameron subjected patients to intensive psychic driving experiments. This involved playing recorded messages to patients for days on end. Many of his patients were not mentally ill, but were seeking help for minor anxiety. The destruction of records by Richard Helms was a deliberate cover-up. He hoped to erase a dark chapter of the CIA's history forever. The surviving financial records provided a roadmap for investigators. They listed payments to the various institutions involved in the research. The church committee hearings were televised, captivating the nation. Sidney Gottlieb was called to testify but claimed to remember very little. He was granted legal immunity in exchange for his testimony. No one was ever criminally convicted for their role in Project MKUltra. Many victims and their families filed civil lawsuits against the government. Some received small settlements, but many received nothing. The project officially ended in 1973, but its influence lingered. It raised fundamental questions about the limits of government power. The program's legacy is one of pain, paranoia, and unanswered questions. It remains a cautionary tale of science untethered from morality. The search for truth about MKUltra continues for many researchers and journalists. New documents are occasionally declassified, adding small pieces to the puzzle. The full story, however, may be lost to the incinerators of 1973. The program explored using psilocybin from mushrooms for interrogation. Researchers documented every bizarre and terrifying reaction from the subjects. The project's secrecy was paramount, even from other parts of the CIA. Gottlieb's team was known as the Technical Services Staff. They were the agency's equivalent of Q from the James Bond novels. The project's funding reached hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. The CIA even established front organizations to channel money to researchers. One such front was the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. The program's end was partly due to the changing political climate of the 1970s. The Watergate scandal increased congressional oversight of the executive branch. The story of Frank Olson was one of the first major cracks in the wall of secrecy. His family's persistence forced the government to admit its role in his death. The program's victims were left with shattered minds and lives. Many suffered from lifelong depression, anxiety, and memory loss. The tale of MKUltra is a dark mirror held up to the Cold War. It reveals the extreme measures that were considered justifiable in the name of national security. The ethical questions raised by the program are still debated today. It remains a powerful symbol of the abuse of power. The shadow of MKUltra has not faded with time.